Hello, my name is Michael Tyler. I'm from Brunswick, Georgia, and I've put together this short video for those of you who have not seen the scanning probe in action yet. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. First of all, we need to go ahead and open our box with the scanning probe and install it into the CompuCarve machine. It installs the same way that you install a carving bit. However, there is a plug on the end of the probe that plugs into the accessory receptacle on the truck itself. And I've just plugged in the probe, and now I'm just making sure it's good and secure. Now I've made a scanning sled out of some laminate shelving that I purchased at Home Depot. And we need to put the scanning sled in to get ready for our scanning object. And I'm just going to make sure that it's tied up against the slide plate. Not too tight. You want to make sure it still can move freely. And for our subject, for the object we'll scan today, I've picked out a small seashell. And I'm just going to hot glue it to the base of the sled. Just need to figure out where the shell makes contact and just apply the glue to those areas. I do have some lines drawn on my sled. You can't see them from this angle, but there's some pencil lines there that help me place objects for scanning. Now I'm just measuring to make sure that I can get an idea of how deep I want to do our scan. That looks okay, so we're just going to crank down the rollers, give it a few clicks. Okay, we'll go ahead and power up the machine and hit number 1 to go ahead and let the probe get its homing position. Now we're going to scan the area, but first of all we need to jog to diagonal corners around an imaginary rectangle around our object. So I'm going to select a corner that's in the upper right hand side of the seashell imaginary rectangle. So I'm just jogging to that position. Once you've found the position that you like, you just kind of have to eyeball through the slot and find that spot where you want to start your first corner. Just kind of peek through the slot here. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and that will lower the probe down to the surface of the sled at our first corner. Here's another angle, that lowering to the first corner. So I'm going to press enter to confirm that's where I want that first corner to be. Now of course we've got to jog to our ending corner. That's going to be diagonally from the corner that we just set. So in this case it'll be the lower left corner of that imaginary rectangle we've got around our object. And we're lowering to our second corner. Now before we proceed with the scan, I'm going to go ahead and set a couple options here. First of all, I want to make sure I'm on best quality, so I'm going to select best quality. We're still not ready to proceed. I want to set my maximum depth. And what I usually do is I'll grab an object like this wedge piece of board, and I'll position it so that I'll let that probe lower down onto the section of board where it gives me the desired depth I want it to go. So I'm not scanning all the way down to the surface of the sled. I'm scanning above the surface of the sled. You see I'm lowering it down to that point. So what the machine's going to do is to scan all around our object, and I think we're scanning down to a depth of about 0.6 of an inch, something like that. I very seldom let the probe scan all the way down to the surface of the sled. That way, when the scan is finished, you have just the object. You don't have a bunch of surface area around that object, which you have to either edit out later or play with the depth of the carving in Designer to get rid of that background, or using the raise and lower feature in the Designer editing software. So this way you get a nice clean scan without having to fiddle with removing any background. And we see here that the probe will make multiple passes back and forth over the object. You notice I laid out this shell so this lengthwise. I found that if you lay out your objects lengthwise in line with the movement of the truck, the scan actually takes a bit shorter time to finish. If I had laid the shell out perpendicular to the motion of the scanning probe, it would make a lot more repeated passes and would take a bit longer to scan. It's not much of a difference, but it's a little, the quicker the better. Now throughout the scanning process, you'll be able to see on your LCD display the progress of your scan, what percentage of the scan is done. We're at about 84–85% now, so we're nearly finished. So right now it's just finishing up that remainder of blank space. You see it's riding above the surface. And we're just about done. This thing's going to be finished right at the end of this. Okay, our scan's done, and I'll power down the machine. I just watch the LCD make sure it goes blank before I unplug the memory card. Of course, we need to take the memory card over to the computer and plug it into the card reader, CarveWright card reader. And we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, now I've opened up Designer, and I'm going to select Download Scan. Shows me what's on the card. I'll select the scan we just did, and it loads it up, and there's our scan of our seashell. You can rotate it just like you can in Designer, kind of take a look at it. You can also do all types of editing in the edit window on the right hand side here. I'm pretty happy with this, so I'm just going to go ahead and save this to my favorites library. Named it Shell Test. And I already have a directory for shells. I'm going to name it Shell Test, and I'll save that as a pattern into my shell directory. And I'll just close this out. I don't need to save it. I've already imported that pattern into Designer. So we're in Designer now, and I'm going to go ahead and open up our favorites here. Go down to our shells directory. Can't quite read it, so I'm going to slide this over so I can see which one's. There it is, Shell Test. I'm just going to drag it over here, enlarge a little bit. Don't really need a feather around it, but I'm going to do a carved out area here anyhow, so I'm just going to draw a box around it. And the default's a 1/4 inch deep, but it needs to be deeper than that. Let me try a 1/2 inch. That's not quite enough. Let me go 7/10 of an inch. And there you have it. There's our shell. Now, of course, you can play with the depth and the height of the object in your carve out area and get it just exactly the way you want it. Resize it however you want. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. Happy scanning!